Hello, my name is Jason Banks, and I'd like to thank you for taking the time out to talk to me. Um, this should only take approximately 15 minutes of your time. Being a service based business, software requires no financial investment to get started. Regardless of where you are in the world, all business requires software in order to promote their services and to stay ahead of their competition. While it's important to understand the ins and outs of the business model, no talent is required to get started. As long as you have access to the internet, you can manage your business from anywhere, be it lounging on a beach in Jamaica or even backpacking through Prague. Today, you will learn how I managed to secure my first 2200 of profit within 2 weeks. Here's a little about me. My name is Jason Banks, and I'm an entrepreneur from the United States. When I graduated college, I thought I'd better work my way up the corporate ladder. I mean, I couldn't think of a business, and without that, I'd never be able to quit my job, let alone achieve financial freedom. I felt terrible because I was living in this constant cycle of working, eating, and sleeping. Then my friend wrote a book that explained how he made 2200 in a month. He proved me wrong when I doubted him 6 months prior to his book. And after he published his book, it became crystal clear to me where I was going wrong this whole time. I learned that you need to learn to solve problems. After reading this book, I immersed myself into software, committing all my time to learning the ins and outs of the industry. I managed to quit my job within 2 weeks, and my plan was to start reaching out to all the local businesses in my area. Initially, I found myself spending all week calling up businesses to speak to maybe one or two owners. And my strategy was to create something that would make it possible to help people in the same position that I was in. Then I'd be really happy. Once I've cemented how the system worked, I started to let other aspiring entrepreneurs use my system. So, why is software so demanding? Software is one of the most effective tools you can use to reach your target audience. Before the internet was introduced, if you wanted to keep up to date with the news, you had to read a local paper or tune into the radio. In the very early days of the internet, it was designed to send small amounts of data between two terminals and was a highly complex system which managed a team of elite coding professionals. While the internet was welcomed by many, it did have its skeptics. The internet allowed all types of business to thrive and not just those that exist online. As the capabilities of the internet are realized, you can leverage the tools and technologies to help your business grow, whatever industry you're in. Optimizing your website so it appears on the first page of search engines is expensive and resource intensive. With the internet, the whole experience of searching for what we need has changed. Business owners need to understand the different ways that customers are using online sources to find information about products and services. The largest software company in the world is Microsoft, with over 85% of people in the world owning a computer. Microsoft changed their software to obliterate organic reach and to drive businesses towards their development platform. One of the main issues owners face is that not only they don't know how to use Microsoft software properly, they don't have the time. A software architect will take over the full management of a business's software strategy and their products and services. When I first started, I was a complete beginner, but all over the world right now, there are people just like me of all ages making five, six, even seven-figure profits by running successful software companies. Let's get started. So, what do companies look for? All businesses are suitable for software. To make your lives easier, there are a few perfect starter niches. They include dentists, restaurants, gyms, e commerce, high end salons, and real estate. You need to look, you need to know where to look, who to look for, and how to store their information. You don't have to use Microsoft. You can use Linux, you can use Apple, You can simply use your local knowledge because you know what companies exist in your local area. When you're first starting out, you want to look for single location businesses. You will also want to reach out to higher end businesses to ensure that they can afford your services. And when prospecting, it's important that you have a system in place for recording data. Now, here's a scenario. You've just put together a list of all your potential clients and you need to start reaching out to them. Now, on my first few call sessions, I wasn't given the time of day and I failed miserably. And then it became very clear that these local business owners didn't like direct salesmen because they get pitches on so many different services every single day. So I started calling my list in the evening on my way home from work, and I realized that the most important thing about cold calling is tone. Never underestimate or upset the administrative assistant because they have the power to ensure you never get through to a business owner. In the instance that they're not in, simply ask for a time to call back and take a direct email address for future reference. Once you're through to the owner, you'll need to diffuse them well. From here, if they're interested, you can proceed to book the meeting in for as soon as possible while still allowing yourself a day or two to prepare. Cold calling is how I secured 99% of my meetings at the start of my journey. Now, let's learn how to sign a four-figure deal in 15 minutes. Remember, you're not selling anything. When I had first secured my first meeting, I had such a cocky mindset, as if I was the king of sales. I then realized I didn't need to sell to the business owner at all. I tried to be more relaxed and ditched the salesman approach and simply started to have a conversation. The craziest thing of all, I realized that my sales experience was completely irrelevant, and I became inspired and put together a system for me to follow in all my future meetings. The first stage is discover. The discovery stage of a meeting strategy is all about taking control and learning as much as possible about the potential client so we can use the information as fuel later in the meeting. In any kind of meeting, no matter what the industry, someone must be in control, and that always has to be the person selling, or else you'll struggle to build enough credibility and ultimately will fail. Taking control starts before you walk through the door, and it begins with your mindset. Discuss the weather, sports, their busy or slow week, what kind of coffee your client drinks, just to break the ice and make simple conversation. Ask why the client invited you in today. The point of this is to make them question themselves and put yourself in a dominant position right at the very start of the meeting. Start the meeting by talking about their business and try to understand the client's current position as well as some of the problems that they're facing. Show how you can help, as your service is completely bespoke. Remember, always follow the plan. There is no one size fits all with this software, and by standing firm and stating this, you'll gain instant respect and take back control. You need to be an alpha, take control, stand your ground, and always follow the plan. Here are some discovery questions you can use to ask your client or your prospect. 1. What is an example of your current software strategy? What systems do you have in place to get new customers? How much money are you leaving on the table by not having a software strategy? What sells? What doesn't sell? Why? What days are you busy? What days are slow? What is stopping you from solving these issues on your own? What is your average price per customer? What are your average monthly revenue figures? How important is it to you for me to understand your business? How do you feel about working with a results-based software architect? Where does making money rank as a priority to you? How would you feel if I mentioned that this conversation is confidential and, if necessary, I will sign a non-disclosure agreement? Where would you like to take your business? And what should your revenue figures be if all the discussed problems were solved? Now that we've learned more about the inner workings of a business, we need to emotionally tie everything up and create buy-in. The gap is the difference between a current situation and a desired situation. Explain where the client is and where the client should be, but be realistic. This can't be resolved overnight. Write down where the client is at currently and where the client should be if all their current issues were resolved. Proceed to list issues that you just wrote down and explain the current situation and the desired situation using what you wrote down. Ask for realistic expectations so you can start to solve their issues. Determine how would moving from one milestone to another one would impact their lives, and see how the client would feel if the gap was never closed. So remember, the discovery stage is all about learning as much as we can about the business. Ignite a spark in their brain by asking, where would the client like to take the business? Find out what the revenue should be if these problems were resolved. Remind them how much money they're leaving on the table. The discovery step is an important step in the process, and it leads nicely to the next step in the process, presenting your services. Now, we lay all of our cards on the table and show the business owner exactly what we can offer them. There are three laws to consider when presenting. The law of social proof is that people are influenced by others. The law of comparison is that it's human nature to hate being compared to others. And finally, the law of authority is when you convey yourself as an authority figure, someone who can demonstrate that you know what you're talking about. This creates trust. A presentation must be polished and delivered with poise and professionalism. Providing free advice is simply a technique used for criticizing someone without being offensive. Show them a screenshot of their software application and describe their logo. Explain the importance of their code as it paints an image of them. Let them know that they are not using recommendations, which can be powerful if not left on the table. Tell them that their customers will have to go elsewhere to see what others have to say about your services. Although, if you show them how you write code, they can convert freeware into a premium subscription. Convince them that they have a perfect customer base for your services and that you can do a lot for them. Then, show another screenshot of one of their input screens. Let them know that the screen looks incredible and make them want to work more. Explain that the context isn't bad, but it doesn't reflect the current trends in user interfaces, so no one will have an easy time searching for what they want in the application. The biggest problem, though, is that they're not engaging with their users, even though they have a lot of content. They should be measuring and achieving a higher response rate than this, but their metrics show otherwise. The low response rate and engagement isn't because of poor content, it's because of their software algorithms. It goes back to recent software changes where code reaches less than 3% of their users. Their software behaves like this because the goal was to push users towards a certain part of the application. And another thing to mention to the client is their aim to get people into the application. Now, currently, the software is perfect for an API, and we can create an API that lets users consume web services through their software application, which their team can use. This would be an effective strategy for what the client is offering. In your next screenshot, compare the potential client to one of their competitors. Show how many visitors reach that screen, along with the content that the screen produces. Explain how the majority of the content is being accessed by numerous users, stating they'd like to continue searching. Conclude that there are a ton of potential users using the screen, but most importantly, imagine what kind of impression this interface leaves on new users too, since they are aware that other users raving about how amazing the application feels. It's excellent software proof. If, for instance, I was browsing through the application for somewhere to visit and I visited both pages, it would be a clear decision. Say that. Despite all this, the competition uses a very standard screen and that the client screen is much more attractive. Have them imagine how well the content will perform if we publish the code differently. Show them how code is written and the specific type of code that we can create together. Include two more screenshots. One, a general screenshot of code selecting an option for what service to provide or a product to sell. And two, a screenshot of code determining the target audience that uses this application. Demonstrate that the first screenshot is where you create options, where objectives are clear for your code, whatever it may be. Remember to focus on traffic, engagement, and visuals. Show your competence with traffic by stating that the aim is to drive traffic from one point in the application to another. Share engagement ideas because it's such an important metric as it shows all the users that like and share the application. Using the client's content, the application will directly target people who are likely to engage with the screen, and this is excellent for creating social proof, just like you showed with the competition. Visuals are great, although they are tailored to get more views. Make sure that the second screenshot contains relevant targeting to the potential client. Present the screenshot by showing that the application has data sources everywhere, although the biggest source is the application. On this specific example, show them their ideal audience. Keep it within 3 miles from where the business is located, and you want to look for all age groups who would be interested in that type of application. Prove that the current screen average is 40 clicks a day, and if at least 4 of those users proceed to a checkout screen, that's 4 orders per day, each of those bringing 2 additional people with them. That's 12 customers a day, and at an average spend of, say, $26 each, that's a potential of $307 per day from a $7 investment. On the basis of only 10% of people proceeding to move to the checkout screen, people that have already warmed up by the incredible software proof on your screen, and also from the engagement. Now, to really get them on their knees, once you have your first few clients under your belt, this is the perfect time to further cement your expertise by showing some of the code you've created before and amazing them with the results. Now we close. It's time to get that big fat yes, that signature on the dotted line, and that chunky paycheck in your bank account every month. We're finally at the end of the meeting strategy. So now, say that with their new application, they can track every penny spent, and even what spends correspond to specific code. Whether your users are making bookings for viewing menus, a product, or any specific screen, we can track what they're specifically doing. The client can even track specifically how much one click costs. If we were to run a single page application, the client will be able to track exactly who visited the page on specific days. Then we have ROI too, and user feedback, what searches were trending, and if anyone would recommend the application. It's a snowball effect. If one person has a positive experience with your application, they'll tell their family and friends, who will also recommend the application. And so it continues as more people see it. Over time, the momentum will increase, and the return on investment on a software application in the real world will stack up organically. As with software, it's important to find the right audience as quickly as possible, which is why, on the first month, we will test a variety of different traffic audiences while warming up these audiences' engaging content, which will generate a return on investment. Remember, making revenue is the utmost priority. Hence, we start writing revenue generating code and content from day one. That being said, mention how busy the client is and that Rome wasn't built in one day. It's the 30 to 90 day point when profits start to kick in once we found the perfect audience and warmed them up nicely. After 90 days, it's just a matter of scaling up the code until we hit that perfect balance of code deployment rate versus return on investment. The biggest beauty of all this is, as the client will be providing such a great service to all these new customers, they'll keep coming all the time, bringing more people with them, and that snowball is going to keep growing bigger every single month. It's also important to target the issues discussed earlier, how sales are on Tuesdays and how some of the products that don't sell well. Now let the client know that you intend to use design patterns to resolve their issues. And ask two questions. One, ask if the client believes that you understand the issues the client faces as a business. And two, find out if they think that you have the skills to resolve these issues. If, for whatever reason, they say no to your question, simply ask why and iron out their concerns. Once the client says yes to both questions, show excitement and begin the final step. Actually, the next step, finding out their current software budget. Remember, service charge depends on the value brought to the business. Generally, the higher end the business, the higher end the products. The more costly they are, then the more you can charge. It's not just your service charge that needs to be considered here, but the software budget as well. The software budget needs to be 50% of the service charge, but ideally 100% or more. Inform the client that for full software management, including the full management of daily code writing, as well as the publishing of the application to one or more operating systems, the service charge is $1,300 a month. Based on the discussion, the advised software budget should be $650. Once you get that yes, we want everything tied up as soon as possible. Put together a contract that will include a software proposal and get started right away. Stop by the client's office the next day. Get that contract signed. Arrange for first month's payment and get the initial code set for production. If for whatever reason you don't get an instant yes, make sure you push back and find out the reasons why. Like everything, the more you do it, the better you'll get at executing it. Now, let's learn how to get results for your clients without any software experience. Before you can understand how to get results, you need to establish what you're trying to achieve. We've already gone through our client's problem in the meeting, so the easiest way to get them new customers is by solving their existing problems. Statistically, Tuesday afternoons usually start as a starting point to increase traffic. Think of software as the new microphone. You can use it to get your message in front of anyone and everyone, but just because you can doesn't mean you'll make any money. With this in mind, take your time to ensure your software campaigns captivate and relate to an audience before you start offering lower prices in hopes of a rush. Now let's create your first software application and navigate through the .NET platform. In order to do this, you'll need to ask the client to visit their current software application and do the following. 1. Explain the software environment. 2. Learn administration roles. And 3. Add you as an administrator of the application. Once this is done, you will be able to begin development. To begin developing the client application, consider security requirements that gives the best chance to have the client's business manager the opportunity to create code. Next, add code based on the business manager's requirements. And then at this stage, you're pretty good to start coding. But there's one final thing to do, and that's set up client payment. Now, based on the software settings, the accounts need to be the owners. Email the client invoice where they will have these instructions on how to make a payment. And for security, do not share details regarding client payment with anyone. Before creating the code, you should have a firm understanding of the structure of the .NET platform. To create code, figure out what options are available and manage the process. In order to create code, open a text editor. It doesn't really matter which one. Set the stage for the code by opening a repository and determine the age group the code will reach, genders, languages, and other detailed targeting discussed earlier in this presentation. At this point, we can connect others by including or excluding people who will be using the application. Also, we can select exactly where you want your code to be displayed. Finishing up the code, we can determine a more precise budget as well as the deployment schedule. Remember, scheduling is useful if you would like to schedule code releases in advance and phase deployments in advance as well as pre-select start and end dates so the changeover is autonomous. Finally, we can optimize the application. This is where you bring the code to life and include what we want the world to see. First, determine whether to create new code or use existing code. It's important to make sure that the client's screens are selected, as there is a risk to accidentally include code from another client. Select the visuals for the code that we'd like to run, and use images and creative content to design your code. Depending on the type of application, you will want to preview what will be displayed to users. This may involve changing inputs to generate different previews, and it's important to point out that the application is where to drive traffic to, and the code helps with that. Take a screenshot of the developed screen, along with 3 other iterations, in order to compare differences. Once the code has been created, it should be ready to be demonstrated. Writing powerful code is a skill that comes with both knowledge and time. You now know how to set up your first client and create your first software application for them. Now, knowing what to write alongside your code can be difficult, especially if you haven't created anything before. There are 5 key elements in 90% of revenue generating code. The attention grabber. Directly connect with your audience the right away. The what? Get straight to the point. The why. Tell your audience why your product or service is a no-brainer. Scarcity. Throw them off guard. Call to action. People like being told what to do. It's human nature. In addition, from personal experience, I have found that less code works best when trying to sell. Above all, make sure that the code you're writing is what the audience wants. Scaling. When I started my company in 2013, I scaled to a 6-figure business, which is about 11,000 a month in less than 3 months. As a software architect, having a growth strategy is essential. If you're using cold calls as your main strategy for securing meetings, you need to average 20 cold calls per day. That means make 100 cold calls a week, get 25 owners on the phone, set up 5 meetings, and from those 5 meetings, if you follow this strategy, you'll be able to sign multiple clients. It's important that you don't get disheartened if you don't meet the quota, because at the end of the day, the rate you grow is in your own hands. It all boils down to your own personal goals, ambitions, and what you want from the business. In conclusion, the learning doesn't end here, and I don't want you to struggle like I did when starting this journey. Consider learning online through online courses and obtain certifications when you have time. I want to help others who are hungry for success. Join the incredible community of rapidly growing entrepreneurs and start your journey today. Thank you.